Hey agents, welcome back. Today we're going to be going over our continuation of our training on the 310 purchase and sale contract. Today we're going to do section 4, conveyance, closing, and possession. So we're just going to read through it and we'll talk about it a little bit. Closing occurs when seller conveys property to buyer and occurs no later than 5 p.m. on or before whatever agreed date is, otherwise known as the closing date. Conveyance shall be fee simple, made subject to or depending on all easements, reservations, rights of way, restrictive covenants of record, provided they do not make the title unmarketable or adversely affect the use or value of the property in a material way, and to all government statutes, ordinances, rules, permits, and regulations. Seller agrees to convey marketable title with a properly recorded general warranty deed, free of encumbrances and liens, except as herein stated, and in names and whatever your buyers or the buyers wish to have their names on the deed as. This is the place that they would have that. So let me just stop there. Remember, we talked about in section 1, the names of the people in section 1 are going to be any and all people that are actually buying the property. They are going to be either financing it, paying cash, but they are the actual buyers of the property. Section 4 here is the ownership section, possession. Who's going to be possessing this property? Remember, I gave you an example of parents that were purchasing a home here in Greenville for their son and daughter-in-law because they were moving here for their medical residency. So the father and mother were on section 1, but the son and the daughter-in-law were here on the deed or the possession line. So even if it's a husband and wife, let's say, and on section 1 they have to put their full legal name there, but on section 4 you can have that written whatever way you want. So if you want it, and you've seen this in the tax records, you can have it with middle initials, you can have the full legal name if you want, you can have Mr. and Mrs. John and Angela Smith. You can do it a number of ways. It does not have to mirror the way it's written on section 1. So, and the other important thing is general warranty deed. A couple of years ago, when we all moved to the SER documents, they did not have general warranty deeds, so we had to write that in the blank section before putting the buyer's names in there. So they finally made an update to that about 2 years ago and got that verbiage back in there so we don't have to worry about that. So in whatever names the buyers want to be in, and ownership type determined by the buyer. The deed shall be delivered to the closing attorney's designated place on or before the closing date, no later than 10 a.m. Seller agrees to pay all statutory deed recording fees, otherwise known as deed stamps, or a sales tax pretty much for the seller to sell their property in the county of record. Parties agree that brokers shall have access to the closing and relevant documents, and the broker shall be given copies of the settlement statement prior to closing for review. Parties agree to hire or use licensed attorney or attorneys. Seller shall convey possession of a vacant and reasonably clean property, free of debris, along with all keys, codes, any remote controls, available documents, which are manuals, equipment warranties, service information, and the like, and similar ownership items to buyer at closing. So we'll jump back up to fee simple in terms of ownership types. Fee simple is in the United States of America, it's the highest, least limited ownership type. There's leasehold, and there's lease fee, and then leasehold. types that are reserved for either land leases and other things. But in terms of single property or real estate to live in, fee simple is the highest level of ownership. Doesn't mean that there's no regulations or limitations. What fee simple means is that you as the owner own everything. The house, the property, the land, from the air rights to the mineral rights, from all the way up in the air, the boundary lines through the air, down into the ground with all the mineral rights. So what the kind of the second half of this first part here is saying is it's fee simple, but subject to or depending on any recorded easements or reservations or rights of way, or obviously restrictive covenants. So there are allowable outside limitations and forces that can put some limitations on a fee simple property. We all know about easements, rights of way. If you have a 4-acre property and on the back half there is a large power line from Duke Energy, some of those large power lines can have a 50, 100, I've seen up to 200-foot rights of way if they're the huge power lines. And that means from the center of the power line structure, it's a sum total of 200 feet, basically 100 feet on each side of the middle of that power line structure. So obviously the smaller those power lines are, the smaller the rights of way should be. Restrictive covenants, obviously we all understand that. You can have deed restrictions on a property that come with the property and last forever. And most known restrictive covenants are from HOAs, covenants and bylaws within a community. And let's see here. So government statutes, ordinances, rules, permits, regulations. So any other government regulations could also be enforced on a property, on a fee simple property, for one reason or another, depending on what part of the county it is. Is it in the city? There could be extra limitations. So fee simple isn't 100% perfect. It still can allow for some limitations, but it is still the highest level of ownership. Down the second half here, seller agrees to pay all statutory deed recording fees. Again, that is the same as deed stamps. So in the state of South Carolina, that is calculated as $3.70 per $1,000 of the purchase price. So if it is a $400,000 sale, then you're looking at 400 thousands. So you would take 400 times $3.70, and that would get you somewhere around $1,400 somewhere. So the deed stamps are to be paid by the seller, and obviously this is a state document. This is what we usually all use, but one little side note here is if you are taking a buyer to either a regional or national builder, a lot of them are using their own contracts. They have their own attorneys draw it up. These things are 20, 30, 40 pages long. And 9 times out of 10, they are in multiple places in their contract, they are putting verbiage that says the buyer is going to pay the statutory deed recording fees. So you need to be very aware of that. You need to be reading these builder contracts, because if your buyer is getting their estimated closing fees from the lender, they're calculating all of the money that they need to bring, they could very well have a surprise $600,000, $1,500 add-on to their money to bring to closing that could really mess somebody up and really make somebody angry. So with these builders, you have to be a little bit leery, and you might as well just go ahead and ask the on-site agent, which they may or may not know even, because it could be tucked away in page 28 really. but you need to be asking about it. And if they don't know, if they can't get you an answer, then you're going to have to represent your client really well and read the builder's contract and see if it's in there. How are they going to handle the seller deed stamps? So just a little extra tip there. And yeah, so there should be no problem from any closing attorney ever to send you or the office the preliminary closing statements. If you do have any kickback, then you can always bring the closing attorney back to Section 4 here, that both buyer and seller have ratified and executed that they agree that both brokers are going to get the preliminary closing statements prior to closing for review, which allows us to service our clients at a continual high level. Make sure all the numbers are perfect and that there are no questions, and then it gives us a chance to obviously meet with our clients and review it and make sure they understand everything before you get into closing, and you end up having an hour and a half closing because your buyer doesn't understand all the numbers. So I think, let me check one more quick review here. That is pretty much it for Section 4. Thank you for watching another one of these videos, and I'm looking forward to continuing these, getting this document done, moving on to more of the other SCR documents. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.